I would like to talk to you about an issue that I think hits all of us very hard, and it is a struggle. It is a struggle today to keep our privacy and at the same time to be able to communicate with everyone out there on the internet. A lot has changed since the internet started in the mid-1990s. And today we're going to talk about data brokers and how they affect you. And actually, maybe some of you are familiar with this, but a lot of you, I'm sure just like I, don't really know the extent of where they are and how they affect us. There are a lot of different social networks out there that we participate in. There's Facebook, that allows us to communicate with our friends and family. There's LinkedIn, that allows us to do business. We also have our little GPSs that tell us how to get to places. All of this technology is wonderful. It's great for us. It allows us to do things quickly and more efficiently. But there is a concern, and the concern is our privacy. How much are we compromising? Different countries look at privacy differently. In our country, we look at privacy and one of the tests is whether we believe we have an expectation of privacy. Well, I can tell you, most people today in America don't really feel they have an expectation of privacy, and they've kind of given that up in order to buy that iPhone, in order to buy those shoes over the internet. Other countries, such as in the EU, they believe in a basic right, a fundamental right to privacy. So the approaches are different, the laws are different, the regulations are different, and sometimes this can be difficult. It can be difficult for our multinationals that are working all over the world. If you take a look at a company like Facebook, Facebook wants to make everybody secure, everybody feel safe. This is basically the ability for them to bring in new business, new users. The problem with a company like Facebook is that they have to comply with the laws here in the United States and in the EU and in other parts of the world. And some of those laws require notifying you of a data breach. Some of those laws involve telling you about your privacy. And so you are able to see this in their privacy policy. But they have to comply with the laws of various countries, and sometimes this can be a problem. And we'll get into that. But first, let's talk about the data brokers and how they affect you. Well, data brokers appear everywhere. They appear on Twitter, and they actually partner with Twitter. They partner with Facebook. DataLogic partners with Facebook, and it partners with Twitter. They're not going to tell me how much ice cream Mr. Jones has had on a Friday night. They're not looking at your wall. But what they will tell me is 20-year-olds, 20-something out there, when they break up and all of a sudden they change their data to single, because you're able to say you're single or you're in a relationship, a lot of them go out and buy ice cream. That's the kind of information that DataLogic collects. How do they do that? They partner with Facebook, and they partner with your loyalty card. When you go into Safeway, when you go into one of these markets and you're buying ice cream, they put this information together. Does this bother you? Does this concern you? Maybe not that. Maybe you don't mind that we know that 20-somethings, when they break up, buy ice cream. TLO actually is another company that gets background research. And what they do is when you're driving your car, they collect the information from all these cameras, you know, when you're running a red light, from your license plates. They collect all this information and they give it to law enforcement. They not only give it to law enforcement, they sometimes give it to law firms, and they sell it. Can you opt out of having your data collected? This is a good question. Well, on Facebook you can. It takes 30 days. But each user in your household has to do it. For TLO, no. Unless you want to ride on dirt roads. How about if you want a mortgage? If you want to go buy a car? Some of you haven't gotten your first car yet. There are companies out there like Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. They collect all your information so that you can get your car. But they also sell that information. Life events. They sell it to advertisers. Advertisers that want to target you because you're about to have a baby. You're expecting a baby. You're buying your first home. See, now maybe some of you understand that these companies gather your information, but to what extent are they using your information? All right, so you're not on Facebook. You drive on dirt roads, and you don't need a car. You don't need a new car. So none of those will touch you, but you are on the internet. When you're on the internet, there are companies that track your IP address and can tell your name, your location, your zip code, all of this other information. Can you opt out of that? Sure. But the problem is every time you use a new browser, you have to do it again. Or if you get a new computer, you have to do it again. And for those of you who have tried Match.com, OkCupid, I'm not sure what else is out there, but there are a few of them. You got to be careful with those. Because yes, you want to meet Mr. Right or, Mrs. Right. And you're willing to give out all your information for this. Some of these sites will actually ask you hundreds of questions because they're going to match you. Personal questions. And you're really excited about this. But what you don't realize is, first of all, who else is going to get access to this? And sometimes they're bugs. Sometimes inadvertently this information leaks out. And there are people there waiting to gather that information. So the next time you really want to be honest about all these things and put them online, think about that. If it's something that's precious to you, keep it precious. So, what's going on? How can we protect ourselves? Well, I mentioned a couple of different ways. You can go online, you can opt out, but you have to read and find that notice and find the privacy policies in these different sites. With regards to the last one, there's a group, I forget the name of it, but I think Spokio, Been Verified. There are a few of these in which you can go online and you can say, I want to know more about this person. And you can find out their public record, if they've had an arrest, all these different things. Well, if you want that information kept to yourself, you can contact these companies and let them know, Been Verified, Spokio, and all of these different ones that all of a sudden pop up with your information. Show them your state driver's license, and within 7 to 14 days, you can delete it. But what I've just given you are a whole bunch of different ways to opt out of different things. I'd have to make a book so that you can protect yourself. And guess what? Not everybody does. Our students don't. Our children don't. Some of our senior citizens don't, because this is all new, and there's so much out there. So, other ways to protect ourselves. And then I'll give you other ways of building your identity, because you can turn this around. The next time you break up with somebody, pay with cash if you're going to get ice cream. And pay with a credit card if you're going to get spinach and vegetables. So, but EU data protection reform is out there. We have a new reform coming. The EU data protection directive has been out there since 1995. The difference between a directive and regulation, the directive was non-binding. So we had 28 EU countries taking variations of this data protection directive. That worked pretty well in the 1990s, the mid-1990s, but so much has changed now, including the revelations by Ed Snowden that prompted the EU to say, our data, our privacy, basic human right, we're going to create a regulation. Regulation is binding. Is this good for us? Yes, absolutely. Why? For our multinationals, everything is going to be streamlined now in the EU. No longer are you going to have to comply with France and Spain and Italy, and if there's a breach, you have to notify a data protection authority in every one of those countries. That's been very, very difficult. Now US companies doing business with the EU, everything will be streamlined. This is supposed to happen next year, this data protection regulation. Right now, they're still negotiating, they're still tweaking. So this is going to be great for multinationals to streamline the process. How is this going to affect you? Well, not only is it going to be for those companies that decide to do business in the EU, but the extraterritorial effect is even broader. It's going to affect any company that decides to provide services or monitor the EU. So what does this mean for you? Well, what that regulation says, among other things, right now it's saying 24-hour notice of any breach. So companies like Facebook not only have us as users in the United States, they also have members of the EU. If they must comply with a 24-hour notice of a breach, that means everyone else here is going to find out about it, because we have newspapers, we have social media, we have the groundswell. Now, it's questionable right now whether there's going to be 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. This is what the companies are right now discussing. Okay? Companies are saying, wow, that's too quickly. We can't turn around that fast. So what I can tell you is it's going to be shorter. So you're going to know that your information has been hacked. This is not only for knowing about our data, but it's also, we recently have had issues with our credit cards. It affects technology everywhere. So this is good. Another issue, our information is being collected. This data is being stored. It's gold. Data brokers are selling it. The EU has something called the right to be forgotten. This is the right to delete or erase or not post your information after a certain period of time. What is that time? It depends. It depends on why that information is out there. But what I can tell you is if you did something when you were 24 years old and you can't get a job now that you're 40, because of that information and it's not relevant, that information will be deleted. Again, these are issues that the companies are concerned about because they're like, how can this really happen? You know, we saw Barbara Streisand's house when she wanted that deleted, how it spread, and everyone was able to see it. So how can we really protect ourselves, and how can we really have that right to be forgotten? That's what they're working on. But the good news about this is when it happens in the EU, it will give us hope. And what I'd like to see is reform, data protection reform on both sides of the Atlantic, so that our multinationals can deal with this a little bit better. I'd like to end just by saying that, a lot of you are concerned about privacy. You should be concerned, but there is hope, and we're going to see so many changes next year, and they're going to be good changes for our multinationals and for us. Thank you.